Hare Krishna. Welcome to our evening katha. Our sincere hope is that you're all safe and sound. We hope that you're increasing your hearing and chanting in this incredible time. And today we're going to go back to Avantipur and discuss how Krishna retrieved the son of Sandipani Muni. A very interesting chapter in Gopal Champu. So devotees always requested me to sing this song. So we'll sing that very beautiful song, Braja Janamana Sukhakari. Sri Radhe Braja Janamana Sukhakari Radhe Chama Chama Cham Sri Radhe Braja Janamana Sukhakari Radhe Shama Shama Sham Mor Mukuta Makara Krita Kundala Gale Vaijandi Mala Mor Mukuta Makara Krita Kundala Gale Vaijandi Mala Charananupura Rasala Radhe Shama Shama Sham Charananupura Rasala Radhe Shama Shama Oh Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Oh Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Sri Radhe Braja Janamana Sukhakari Radhe Shama Shama Sham Sri Radhe Braja Janamana Sukhakari Radhe Shama Shama Sham Sundara Badana Kamaladala Lochana Banki Chittavana Hari Sundara Vadana Kamaladala Lochana Banki Chittavana Hari Mohana Bamsi Vihari Radhe Shama Shama Sham Mohana Bamsi Vihari Radhe Shama Shama Sham Oh Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Oh Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Sri Radhe Braja Janamana Sukhakari Radhe Shama Shama Sham Sri Radhe Braja Janamana Sukhakari Radhe Shama Shama Sham Vrindavana me denu charabe Gopi Janamana Hari Vrindavana me denu charabe Gopi Janamana Hari Sri Govardhana Dari Radhe Shama Shama Sham Sri Govardhana Dari Radhe Shama Shama Oh Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Oh Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Sri Radhe Braja Janamana Sukhakari Radhe Shama Shama Sham Sri Radhe Braja Janamana Sukhakari Radhe Shama Shama Sham Radha Krishna Miliya Vado Gaura Rupa Avatari Radha Krishna Miliya Vado Gaura Rupa Avatari Kirtana Dharma Prachari Radhe Shama 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 Kirtana Dharma Prachari Radhe Shama 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 Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Oh Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Sri Radhe Prajajanna Manasukakari Radhe Shama 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 Sri Radhe Prajajanna Manasukakari Tumbina meri or na koe Nama Rupa Avatari Tumbina meri or na koe Nama Rupa Avatari Charanana me balihari Radhe Shama 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 Charanana me balihari Radhe Shama 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 Narayana balihari Radhe Shama 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 Narayana balihari Radhe Shama Shama Oh Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Oh Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Oh Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Sham Radhe Jai Jai Sri Radhe Sham. So again, let us welcome you to our evening katha, and we hope that you're all safe and sound and increasing your hearing and chanting. Today we're going back to Avantipur to hear about how Krishna retrieved the dead son of his guru, Sandipani Muni. So just like yesterday, the scene starts that Nanda Baba is sitting in Sabha with all the Brijbasis, and yesterday Madhukant was speaking, today's Snigdhakant begins this chapter. So we heard about how Krishna got all his lessons in one day, all the 4 Vedas, all the 64 arts. And so finally there was a big ceremony for the graduation of Krishna and Balaram. In that ceremony, the whole of Avantipur came out, and they brought so many ornaments and beautiful cloth, and Krishna and Balaram were just astoundingly beautiful with all their ornaments and cloth. So then they fell before their teacher and said, what can we give you in Guru Dakshina? Because out of gratitude, we should give some gift to the spiritual master in return for receiving transcendental knowledge from him. So Sandipani Muni carefully consulted with his wife, and he said, my son several years ago disappeared in the ocean. If somehow or other you could retrieve my son. And Krishna and Balaram said, what you're asking is very difficult, but we'll very happily perform this service for our spiritual master out of gratitude for all the knowledge you've given us. So then they were given a chariot and a chariot driver, and Krishna Balaram mounted the chariot, and they went off to the sea at a place called Prabhas Kshetra, which we hear about where the Yadus fought with each other. And when they approached the ocean, which they had never seen before, I imagine in Braj there's many people who never see their ocean in their whole lifetime, because we're completely landlocked here. So they saw the ocean, And Krishna and Balaram were amazed, and they began to discuss amongst themselves. Just see how the ocean is running up to touch our feet. And he's paying his obeisances to us. And see how he's playing music, like the thunder of 1,000 thunderbolts. He's playing music for us, to greet us. And see how he's offering beautiful white flowers to us. And he's dancing so nicely, so happy to see us. And so many little waves are there that are just like little folded hands offering respects to us. In this way they began to describe their vision of the ocean. Suddenly the ocean himself appeared before them and bowed before the two brothers and said that I am sent by Varuna. And he told me, you are the salt ocean. And there's also a dahi ocean, a milk ocean, sugarcane ocean. But Krishna, he is the ocean of mercy, unlimited ocean of mercy without any boundaries. Because Krishna and Balaram, they're amazed at how the ocean expanded in all directions. But he's the unlimited ocean of mercy without any boundaries. So what is it that this servant of the servant, because he's a servant of Varuna, what is it this servant of Varuna, servant of the servant, can do for you today? So Krishna told him that many years ago the son of our guru, Sandipani Muni, was taken by the ocean. So if you can please return him. And the ocean personified said, actually, ocean didn't take him. He was swallowed by a great demon named Panchajana, who's in the form of a conch shell. So then Krishna came back to the chariot. He told Balaram, you remain here with the chariot and I will go. And Krishna dove into the ocean all the way down to the bottom of the sea. And he entered the kingdom of Panchajanya. Panchajanya, this conch shell demon, saw Krishna. Immediately, just like Bakasura, he swallowed him up. But then, because of Krishna's effulgence, he immediately vomited him up and died. When he died, Krishna pulled that demon out of the conch shell and ripped him open. He could not find a trace of his guru's son anywhere in the belly of the conch. But then he took that conch, and because the demon's name was Panchajanya, the conch became known as Panchajanya, the very famous conch of Krishna. So then he returned to Balaram and said, I couldn't find any trace of the son of our guru. So we will have to go to the abode of death, to Yamaraj. And Yam, one meaning of Yam is control. So we will go to Yamaraj and control Yamaraj. So they took off on their chariot, flying faster than the speed of light. And they reached the abode of Yamaraj. When they reached the abode of Yamaraj, they heard all this horrible sound, roaring and crying and people yelling and screaming. Terrible suffering was going on. So Krishna took his conch shell. Boo! Immediately the fire of hell became cold. The machine that punished the sinners broke. The Asipatra hell, with the blade stopped turning. The Kumbhipaka stopped cooking. The roar of hell lost his fearsome feature. And the needles that were stitching the people began to unable to stitch. And the Vaitarani river, which is very difficult to pass over, suddenly became easy to pass over. And suddenly the whole of hell became liberated. By seeing Krishna and hearing his conch shell, they became liberated from all of their sins. And suddenly millions of airplanes appeared to take them to the imperishable abode. And they all mounted those airplanes with tears in their eyes. They offered prayers to Krishna and Balaram and went to the imperishable abode. In this way hell became totally empty. Then Yamaraj, seeing hell empty, he became very happy. he came before the Lord. His body was trembling. Tears were flowing from his eyes. He was shivering. He was paralyzed. He couldn't move. Finally, he was able to talk. He offered very beautiful prayers to Krishna and welcomed him very nicely. And Krishna thought, I'm meeting the great devotee Yamaraj, but I've always heard, or Krishna didn't say this, he said in his mind, he said, I always heard that he's a very fearsome creature, but he's offering me such a wonderful welcome. So then he told that our Guru lost his son in the ocean. The ocean said he didn't take it. It was taken by Panchajana, the conch shell demon. But I couldn't find a trace, even a speck. I was hoping to find a speck of his body and resuscitate him with that speck. But I couldn't find a trace of my Guru's son. And Yamaraj said, yes, I could understand. Simply your name alone is sufficient to liberate everybody from hell. So I could understand this was not your real mission. Your real mission was to come here and show mercy to me. And I'm so happy to tell you that one soul is remaining with me. Although everyone was liberated, I kept one soul with me. But the body you want has been destroyed, because I take the souls to hell in a different body. But I will give him a body just like the son that your Guru lost. So then he went into his inner chambers, he came back, and he brought that young boy before Krishna and Balaram. When Krishna and Balaram saw that boy, they were overjoyed and they embraced him, and their eyes could not be satisfied by seeing his face. They were just seeing him again and again. So then Yamaraj praised Krishna and Balaram very nicely, and then he offered them so many gifts and beautiful jewels and so many things he offered to them. So then Yamaraj, taking permission from Krishna, having seen Krishna to the joy of his heart, he returned to his own abode. So then they put that boy on their chariot, and that boy was just seeing the two merciful faces of Krishna and Balaram, hearing their sweet talks and feeling their wonderful affection. Somehow or other they traveled, he didn't even notice that they traveled all the way from the abode of Yamaraj to his home. When he reached Avanti, Jiva Goswami says, why should I describe just about the Guru and his wife? Hearing the conch shell, the Panchajanya conch shell, the Krishna blew, the entire city of Avanti turned out on the sides of the roads to see Krishna and Balaram. And they saw between the two this beautiful boy, the son of Tandipani Muni, was sitting. So when they arrived before the Guru, they put the boy down first, then they both demounted the chariot and fell before Krishna and Balaram, fell before Tandipani Muni and his wife, whose eyes were filled with tears. And Tandipani Muni was so happy to receive back his son. And then he offered, then Krishna offered all of those ornaments and gifts that they received from Yamaraj. He offered them to Tandipani Muni, and then very happily Tandipani Muni fed him in his house. Then everyone stayed for 3 or 4 days just to relish the association of Krishna and Balaram. And they heard from the Brahmins who had come from Mathura all about the qualities of Krishna and Balaram. Then the king of Avantipur came, and now his doubt, because Krishna had very carefully hidden himself, he told, I am the son of one Vasu, one jewel of the Yadu dynasty. And it just so happened the king of Avantipur was married to Vasudev's sister, and so Krishna was his relative, and now his doubt was satisfied. So the king of Avantipur invited Krishna Balaram to his house and received him very nicely and gave him wonderful gifts. So then Krishna Balaram wanted to depart. they asked permission from their Guru to depart. And the Guru was so sad, with tears in his eyes. He was giving them permission to go. And he said, birth after birth, my only desire is to be your, that you become my student and I become your Guru. And Krishna said, so be it, tatastu. Then finally, taking all the Brahmins on the chariot, he mounted the chariot with the Brahmins and tried to move through the streets of Avanti, but all the citizens of Avantipur had turned out to see Krishna leaving. Nobody wanted him to leave. With great difficulty he moved through the streets of Avanti. Everybody was following along behind him. Finally, from the center, after a great length of time it took from the center of Avanti to the edge, Krishna stopped the chariot and he told everyone, you must remain here. But do not worry, I will always remember you. Because although Mathura is the birthplace of my body, the birthplace of our qualities is here in Avantipur. So just as I always remember the residents of Mathura, I will always remember you. Now you please return to your houses. But everyone stood there, especially Sandipani Muni and his wife, and watched as Krishna went into the distance. It almost seemed like lightning speed. They reached Mathura. And hearing Krishna's concert, all the residents of Mathura turned out to receive him. They were so happy. And they were overjoyed to see Krishna and Balaram sitting on the chariot with all the Brahmins who had gone with him. And everyone was lining the streets. They finally got to where Vasudeva and Devaki were standing, and they released the Brahmins. And the Brahmins, not released, but they unloaded all the Brahmins from the chariot. And the Brahmins began to tell all of the wonderful things that had happened, recounting the whole story, and everyone was totally amazed. And Vasudeva and Devaki, they brought their son down from the chariot, both their sons. And then all the learned persons of Avantipur came there and began to examine the knowledge of Krishna and Balaram, and they were fully satisfied. And they were fully satisfied. And Vasudeva then took him back to his home. So then Snigdhakanta says, in this way, Krishna retrieved the son of his guru and returned back to Mathura. Nanda Maharaj, hearing this story from Snigdhakanta, he became overwhelmed and began shedding tears. And he embraced Krishna just as if Krishna had just come from Avantipur right at that moment. And then he told Krishna that if you go anywhere and you fight and you win a kingdom and still thinking that kingdom useless, you return to us, then we will always be very happy. Excuse me, Nanda Maharaj. Because now we're back in the Sabha with Snigdhakanta and Nanda Maharaj. And Nanda Maharaj said, and anyone who hears this exploits of my son, he will always be happy, eternally be happy. So today we've heard all these things, we'll eternally be happy. Now today is a very special day. It is Ganga Puja. So there's one special story about Ganga in Vrindavan, although Ganga's not here in Vrindavan. Nearby in the court of Agra, in Akbar's court, he had many Brahmins who were his ministers. An argument arose between them whether Ganga was more purifying or whether Jamuna was more purifying. And both Brahmins presented their arguments, but no one could defeat the other. So finally someone said, only Jiva Goswami could possibly give the answer to this question. So Akbar sent a messenger to Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami said, I have taken Kshetra Sannyas. If I leave Braj, I have to be back before sundown. So if you'll send a very swift chariot, then I can come there and give the conclusion. So Akbar sent his swiftest horses to Mathura, to Vrindavan, and Jiva Goswami went there, and then he began to quote verses just like the flowing of the Ganga itself, glorifying the Ganga. And all the Ganga Brahmins became very happy, and the Jamuna Brahmins became sad. Then Jiva Goswami explained that Ganga was one time touched by the toe of the Lord. We know the story. Some people say Ganga Puja is the day she appeared. Some people say it is the day that she reached to the Rasatala to save the 64,000 sons of Sagar Maharaj. Anyway, there's so many different opinions. So only one time she touched the Lord's foot and she came into this world. But that Jamuna, Krishna was jumping and swimming and splashing in her every day with his whole body, with his feet, not just his toe, but his whole body. So that Jamuna has become 1,000 times more purifying than Ganga, and he began to, just like the flowing of the Jamuna, he began to quote verses glorifying Jamuna. Now the Ganga Brahmins went down, became sad, and the Jamuna Brahmins became very happy. Then he said, but in this Kali age, that same Brajananandan Shamsundar has appeared in Navadvip as Nimai. And every day that Nimai was splashing and playing with his entire body in the waters of Ganga and Jamuna, so that Ganga has become equally powerful as Jamuna, equally purifying as Jamuna. So in this way, Jiva Goswami solved the whole situation to everyone's satisfaction and returned to Braj before sundown. Now it's also the, I don't know if it's appearance or disappearance of, we'll check here. Ganga Mata. Appearance day of Ganga Mata Goswamini. Near Rajasai, in what is now Bangladesh, there was a great king named Naresh Narayan. And Naresh Narayan had only one child, a very beautiful girl named Sachi. And Sachi learned all her lessons very well, and she became very much attracted to Krishna Bhakti. Because she was very well educated, she took whatever scripture came within her hand, she began to study, and she became very attached to Krishna. Such that when her father and mother suggested that they had some nice prince in mind to marry her, she said, I'm not going to marry any mortal man made of blood and stool and skin and bone. I will only accept the Lord as my husband. So they were mortified. And finally, Naresh Narayan and his good wife, they left this world. So then the duties of the kingdom fell on Sachi Devi. But Sachi Devi wasn't at all attracted to kingly life, or queenly life as the case may be. So eventually, on the excuse of going on pilgrimage, she temporarily turned over the administration of the kingdom to her relatives. And first she went to Puri, and she decided, because all the scriptures say you must have a spiritual master, she was looking for a spiritual master. But she wasn't satisfied in Puri, and in a dream she was told to go to Vrindavan. When she came to Vrindavan, she met Haridas Pandit, who was a disciple of Anantacharya, who was a great associate of Lord Chaitanya. And she was very attracted by the knowledge and devotion of Haridas Pandit. But Haridas Pandit, he could understand, everyone knew her history, that she was a princess. Said, you will not be able to tolerate the austerities and penances of staying here in Braj. Better you go back and rule your kingdom and do your Krishna Bhakti at home. But she was determined. She came every day for the class. At that time he was in charge of Govindadev temple. And every day she would take a broom and sweep the temple. And every day she saw the arti and she attended her guru's classes. But still he wasn't satisfied. Then she gave up all of her ornaments and just put on torn cloth, and she began to go to the Brishbazi houses begging madhukari. Then Haridas Pandit was overwhelmed, and he finally gave her initiation. After initiation, he told her he had another lady disciple, Lakshmi Priya, who was there in Radhakund, who chanted 300,000 names, 192 rounds, 3 lakhs. So she went to Radhakund and stayed with Lakshmi Priya, and the two of them spent the day and night chanting and discussing topics of Radha and Krishna's pastimes. And every day they did Prikrama of Govardhan Hill. In this way, the two of them were very attached in devotional service to each other. Finally, Haridas Pandit called her back to Vrindavan, and he told Sachi Devi that the house of Sarvabhaumacharya in Puri is run down, and you know Uriya very well, so you should go there and try and restore this place. And specifically, there's I think it's a Mukunda Shila, not Govardhan, Shalagram Shila. So this shows, although the Shastras say that woman cannot worship Shalagram, but a Vaishnavi, an ordinary woman cannot worship, but a Vaishnavi. He sent her specifically there to worship that Shalagram of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the greatest scholar of his time in India. So she came there, the place was very run down, and she began serving. There was someone had left a beautiful deity of Krishna Rai, and she was serving the deity, and she began to lecture in Uriya, and many people began to come and listen to her lectures, and many people became her disciples. In fact, gradually, as her knowledge of Bhagavatam was so great, and people began to admire her lectures so much, the news got to the king, Mukundadev, and he started attending her lectures. In this way, the king was very pleased with her, and he legally gave over. She didn't want any gift, but he legally turned over Sarvabhauma's house to Sachi Devi. Then it just came, we were just talking about the Ganga Sagar situation. The Ganga Sagar Mela came. But she didn't have any order from her guru to go. She was very anxious to go and join all the Vaishnavas at the celebration in Ganga Sagar, where the Ganga meets the Bay of Bengal. So she thought, because right outside Sarvabhauma's house, those who've been to Puri, you know there's a huge tank there called Sweta Ganga, the white Ganga. So she thought, I will go and take my bath in the Sweta Ganga. And then that particular year, the particular Muhurt was just exactly at midnight. So at midnight, she came out into the tank, and she wandered down the steps into the water. When she was quite deep in the water, suddenly a current swept her off the steps and across the Sweta Ganga to the other side, and suddenly a passage mysteriously opened up, and she found herself inside the Jagannath temple, which was closed for the night. And from Lord Jagannath's feet, the Ganga was flowing, and everybody was there taking their bath and singing and chanting, and huge festival was going on. Ganga Mata was enjoying with all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis in the Ganga. Meanwhile, the guards, they heard all this noise coming from inside the temple. They ran to the king, and the king said, yes, you should open the door and see what's going on. When the king's men came there, they opened the door. And when they opened the door, there was nothing there except Ganga Mata was sitting on the floor, alone. No Ganga, no people, no nothing. So they assumed she must have come to steal the Lord's ornaments. Though many people tried to stop them, saying, no, she's a great saint. They arrested her and threw her in jail. Meanwhile, later in the night, the king got a dream that Lord Jagannath said, I have enjoyed a wonderful pastime with my devotee, and you have thrown her in jail. This is a big offense. And the only way you can get free from this offense is if you go there and fall at her feet and become her disciple. Then you'll be relieved of this offense. The king immediately woke up, he called the guards and the green. He told the pujari also had told the men to arrest her. So they all ran to Sarvabhauma's house, and they fell at her feet and accepted Gopal mantra from her and became her disciples. In this way, she became known as Ganga Mata Goswamini. So today is her appearance day. Today is the disappearance of our great Baladev Vidyabhushan. We know that our Srila Prabhupada dedicated his purports to Bhagavad Gita as it is to Baladev Vidyabhushan, who presented Govinda Bhasha to the world. So that's a very interesting pastime that we know that Govinda Dev eventually went to Jaipur. And there was many Ramanandi sadhus from branch of Ramanuja Sampradaya. They were objecting to the fact that Radharani was worshipped with Govinda. And they were saying there's no name of Radharani in Srimad Bhagavatam, and so many arguments. And they said, anyway, these people have no right to worship because they're not a bona fide sampradaya, because every bona fide sampradaya has a commentary on Vedanta Sutra. But Sriman Mahaprabhu had accepted that actually Srimad Bhagavatam is a natural commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. So he never presented any Srimad Bhagavatam is a natural commentary on Vedanta Sutra, so he had never presented one. So this became a big problem. So the most learned Vaishnava of the time was our Viswanath Chakravarti Thakur. But we can imagine in those days what a trip to Jaipur entailed. Now we just jump, now there's a nice expressway and we just jump on our car and go. But he was very elderly at the time, so he was unable to attend. So he told Baladev Vidyabhushan, who was studying with him, that you go. So Baladev Vidyabhushan went there and he explained in so many ways how the name of Radharani is hidden in Srimad Bhagavatam. Anya Radhito Nunam. This very special verses there. And then he quoted especially from Padma Puran, Radharani's name is there. But they were still complaining that you have no bhasha, no commentary on Vedanta Sutra. So then Baladev Vidyabhushan prayed to his deities that somehow or other we have to present a bhasha. Now, I've been using this lockdown time, some part of it for writing my third volume of Braj Leela. So I know how long it takes just to write a small book and just a simple book of stories. What to speak of write a very deep philosophical work. We can't imagine how much time it took. But within 1 month, Govinda spoke by his own mouth, and therefore this has become known as Govinda Bhasha, the spoken by Govinda. And he presented his Govinda Bhasha before all the scholars, and all the scholars were very pleased and very happy, and thus the worship of Govinda is going on. I don't know if you've ever been to Jaipur, but I advise you never to go there. If you will go there, you will end up like me. You see my body moving around before you, but my heart has been left at the lotus feet of Govinda. If you go there, you'll end up the same. I am unable to take my heart back from Govinda's lotus feet. My body is just flapping here somehow or other. So you'll meet the same fate. Don't ever go there. It is so enchanting place. There's no organized ashram there. The townspeople come. Everyone has his own favorite time for darshan. There's many darshans throughout the day. Some people come for Mangal Artik, some for Darshan Artik, some for the morning Artik, some for the noon Artik, like that. And the townspeople themselves just chant, and they always end the chanting, circumambulating Govinda Dev with Hare Krishna mantra. No matter what they sing, they always end with Hare Krishna mantra. And nobody and everybody's there spontaneously dancing for Govinda Dev. It's a place of, this is what we thought when Prabhupada was preaching to us in the West. We thought India was like that. In the center of every town there's a big temple for Krishna and everybody comes and sings and dances. Then we got to Delhi and Mumbai and we said, what is this? But there we saw Krishna conscious action. Spontaneously the people love Govinda. The Rajasthani ladies in their beautiful color saris with arms filled with bangles are just spinning around. There's some guy with a big pink turban piled on top of his head, and what he's speaking to Govinda nobody knows. He's just sitting there speaking his heart out to Govinda. And nobody buys prasadam for themselves. They buy prasadam and they stand around breaking off little pieces, Radhe Govinda, giving it out to others. Very wonderful place. So by the mercy of Baladev Vidyabhushan, this is going on. Baladev Vidyabhushan's deity is here in Vrindavan. When you go to Radhasham Sundar temple, that big Radhasham Sundar is not the original Radhasham Sundar of Shyamananda Prabhu, whose appearance or disappearance is coming up soon. And we'll hear all about him. But that big deity is the deity of Baladev Vidyabhushan. And just to his, on our right side, there's some small deities. That is the Radhasham Sundar that manifested from the heart of Radharani and was given to Shyamananda. The big deities are the deities of Baladev Vidyabhushan. So all of these important events happened on this day. So we tried to explain something about that also. So how many people are there? 70. So thank you very much for listening. We pray that you remain safe. And since tomorrow is Nirjala Ekadasi, we're going to take off for a couple of days to devote ourselves to hearing and chanting. And I think we'll be back. Panihati festival. We'll all hear about one of our favorite pastimes of Mahaprabhu, Panihati festival. Hare Krishna.